So I guess we're doing this. We are recording a podcast. Welcome to the Student Investor with Ivyn Sambo. So let me set the plot to what to come for the future episodes of this podcast. But before we do that, let me give you a background of who I am so you can understand how my views are influenced, the environment I come from, and how I see the world. Because that will shape whether you enjoy the podcast or not, and that will shape you understanding how I see the world of investing, saving, budgeting, because this podcast is all about that. So who is Ivyn Sambo? Let me start by where I was born. I was born in a small township in Mpumalanga and Nelspruit called Matsulu. Small township of around 40 to 45,000 people. I lived there with my single mom for the first 30 years of my life. Afterwards, I moved to another township called Ganyamazane. A little bit big in terms of size, but population I think is still relatively small. I can estimate maybe around 50 to 60,000 people if I'm not mistaken, but it's an active and more advanced township as compared to the one I was born in. So when I moved here when I was like 13, I felt overwhelmed, so I locked myself indoor. I stayed with my grandmother, which was the two of us. My grandmother at that time was working for government. He was a messenger driver for the Department of Human Settlement, which later on became the Department of Housing and Sanitation. And she also used to work for the Department of Economic Development in Mpumalanga and Tourism. So as someone was overwhelmed with this new township, new area, locked myself in dorm, only going out when I was going to talk to friends or when I'm going to school. I spent much of the time watching TV. And because I didn't have that much things to do, I started reading. And I didn't have books. My grandmother couldn't afford to buy me books. So what did I read? Pamphlets. Pamphlets my grandmother would come with from work, or pamphlets I'll get around the house. Much of those pamphlets talked about housing, urbanization of Nelspruit, and some of them talked about economic development, talked about the sectors, talked about how government planned to develop and invest into the growth of Mpumalanga. And then I got hooked to this idea of what investment is. Started reading more and more and more into it. Started from reading it from a government point of view because those are the only materials were available to me. Later on, because I was becoming interested, to go to the library to understand more about investing. Then my grandmother retired from work. When she retired, she gave me 1,000 rand. Hey Ivyn, here's 1,000. Go spend it on what you want. But because I was a child who always loved staying indoor, guess what I did with 1,000 rand? I invested it. At that time, I didn't know where exactly to invest in it, and the only thing I knew best was the government retail savings bond, because all the government pamphlets, all the government booklets talked about it. So I made my first investment in a post office. In a post office of the first township I lived in, or township I was born in Matsulu. I invested 1,000 rand there. A few years later, I got it back with some few interest in it. I don't remember how much interest was it. I think it was 300 rand, if not 400 rand interest I got. Don't remember, it was a long time ago. And that's how I made my first investment. And that's how I started loving the idea of investment. And I knew if with 1,000 I can get 200 rand back, that's 300 rand profit. That's not 300 rand profit, sorry, that's 30% profit. But I'm not sure it was 30%. As I said, I forgot. But that for me inspired the idea of money. Understanding how money works. Understanding what money can do for you. But at the same time, after I finished high school, I went to university and my eyes were open much more wider to the world of investing. And I started digging even deeper and deeper. Made my first share investment in my first year. And my friends thought I was joking because all of them were jumping at the Forex trade. All of them were talking about Forex. I said, no more. I don't want to be in Forex. I don't want to be there. I want to be in the stock investment. I want to be in the GSE. I started buying shares in the GSE. My first share was Mr. Price, followed by Shoprite. You know why? Because Shoprite and Mr. Price is what I grew up knowing. I used to wear bucket hats to buy for 50 rand at Mr. Price. So it makes sense for me to buy shares of Mr. Price. Eligazi, the township I was raised in Yamazane, we had a Shoprite. So it made sense for me to buy shares of Shoprite. A few years later, after doing research, I understood that businesses are like, no, Mr. Price and ShopRite are not my type of investment. After doing research, I'm like, nah, I sold my shares. Started investing more deep into other companies because I started researching them. And I moved from shares, I started buying other form of investments, to crypto, to ETF. Started going to the New York stock market, and the first share I ever bought there was Microsoft. So that's how I saw the world. That's how I was raised. But during that time as well, I was an active leader. I always enjoy leadership. But at the same time, money was the thing for me. I wanted to know more about money. And I said, what's the best way to know about money? And I said, let's study law. Let me study law. Because I believe the best investor must be the one that understands the regulation of your money. So I did an LLB degree at the University of the Western Cape, which I just completed right now. And I'm about to go to my master's in the University of the Western Cape as well. Because in my mind, I'm like, the best way to understand money is to understand how it's regulated, mostly by government. So I'm in that field. I enjoy studying regulations. I enjoy studying money. I enjoy studying law because it makes me the best investor. But this podcast is not about that. It's about how can we as students, us as young people in South Africa, enter the money space, enter the investment space, and invest our money in the best way possible. But not just invest, but manage our money wisely, deal with the socio-economic issue that comes with being in South Africa and in Africa in general, deal with the fact that we love to live a lavish lifestyle. Those who know me, those who follow me on Instagram, they know I enjoy the finer things in life. But how can we do all of that while still being wise with our money? And that's the aim of this podcast. I'm not here to tell you to stop you living your life. I'm here to tell you cut your expenses. I'm here to tell you live a frugal life in order to be wealthy. I'm here to say let's look at the alternative. Let's have a conversation about the alternative way that we can still live our best life, how we can still support back home, how we can still deal with black tax, how can we still deal with all the socio-economic issues that come in South Africa while we're still investing as young people. And I'll be reviewing companies in this podcast. I'll be reviewing system, regulations, best way for us to save, best way for us to invest. And I'll be having guests. But at the same time, I want us to keep this podcast short. I want it to be between 15, not even 15 actually. I want it to be between 10 to 15 minutes weekly. Just doing that. Talking about money. Talking about the best way to deal with it. And giving my opinion into it. And sometimes bringing expert guests that can give their expert opinion on matters that are relevant to us as young people. I'm not a Mr. Know-it-all. I'm not perfect. My ideas are not perfect. But with this podcast, I aim to engage. I aim to share my opinions. I aim to spark a conversation, spark a debate, spark a need to understand money wisely, but still able to live the lifestyle we want as young people. At the same time, I want to contextualize things. I want to put things in the context of South Africa. There are too many American financial influencers that are influencing South Africa, and that's good. But sometimes they miss the plot because the context of America is not the same as the context of South Africa. So with this podcast, I want to put everything in the context of South Africa and the context of Africa, so we can be able to spend our money wisely. As I said, this is a student investor. I'm a master's student now. I'm a student that studied law, doing my master's in law. I'm a student that interacts with other students through student activism, through student leadership, through socializing. So I want us to do best. But this is not only for students. This is also for all young people in South Africa. Let's create an environment that's suitable for us to have conversation about money, adulting, and how we can be best in creating the generation we want to be and creating the careers and the job opportunities we want, because we are capable of that. So yeah, that's the plot. That's the scene. That's what to expect from this podcast. As I said, this is the Student Investor with Ivyn Sambo. And we're about to go deep to the world of investing, saving, budgeting, and adulting within the context of South Africa. Let's have fun doing so.